We're going to our next talk, and that is Andy van den Dobbelsteen. Now, who is this guy? He's a professor of climate design and sustainability at the Faculty of Architecture of the Technical University in Delft. And he's very much involved with the green buildings, so I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. The built environment theme within the Delft Energy Initiative. And he founded the European Network for Sustainable Regions. And he has worked with Wageningen University in several areas, in the area of sustainable energy landscapes, climate robust cities, and planning for climate adaptation. I guess all these people are sitting here in the audience right now. Okay, so what will he speak about? Well, he has developed something that is very interesting. It's an energy potential mapping, heat mapping, and he will talk about that. And this can form the basis for a spatial plan based on a sustainable energy system or energy neutral urban reconstruction. Sounds very complicated, but I'm sure he can explain it a lot better than I am. I think the cities have a problem in the future, and we must deal with waste streams, energy streams in a totally different way, and that's what he's going to talk about. Andy, the floor is yours for at least 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, it's about dealing with the end of the fossil era, because we're finishing it ourselves and we'll be basically witnessing everything. What you can expect from me, what am I trying to convey in this small lecture? I want to have about future constraints. I will talk about future constraints of cities. I want to talk about the vulnerability of it. I want to talk about steps towards urban resilience. I want to talk about the very special year of 2025 and the generation issue. And the generation issue, not generation of power, but generation of people. But first I want to take you on a small trip to Samsø, which is an island in Denmark, which is a beautiful island, the size for the Dutch people of Texel or Terschelling. And I was there almost 2 years ago, and I witnessed that what happened over there was that an entrepreneur started up the idea that he wanted to have an energy academy that would build their own energy system in which local people living there, civilians, were participating and also becoming stakeholders and shareholders in this energy company. So that he started collecting money from the people themselves, everyone invested in it, and also subsidies from the government into power plants based on solar and straw, which was a waste material on that island. And also investing in wind farms made it possible within 10 years that Samsø became completely self-sufficient. They were already self-sufficient in food, because they are producing for the mainland. In water is also not a problem. Now energy was also solved. But why is this important? And then I have to refer to two important people to me. These are my grandparents, and they taught me a few things. They were always living close to nature, had their own kitchen garden, growing their own food. They went into the forest to pick mushrooms when the season was there. So they taught me when I was staying with them in autumn leave how to deal with nature and that we are responsible for it. So they were very curious about it. And they also told me, because they had witnessed 2 world wars, that you should never take things for granted. It's always an uncertainty in the future, and you should be prepared for it. And indeed, this future is very uncertain. If we look ahead 50 years from now, we don't know what's going to happen. 50 years ago, we didn't know that we would be standing here. But we know a few constraints. One, of course, has to do with climate change. Future buildings need to be ready for extreme weather events. Drought, but also increased excesses of rainfall and bushfires in countries where that happens. We also have to deal with scarcity of resources. Not just energy, not just metals, also phosphates for food. I don't have to tell that here in Wageningen. So we only need to use materials from the circular economy. Only growable materials or materials that can be completely 100% recycled. The third thing, of course, is the depletion of fossil fuel. We really need to become independent from fossils. And that energy is a serious problem is demonstrated by figures. The world is dependent by 86%, the Netherlands even 98%. So if something happens in the supply of these, we really have a problem. We may continue with importing fossil fuels, but this is, for instance, an image of the price of oil, which peaked at the moment of the financial crisis. So the financial crisis basically saved us from an energy crisis. But now it's going up again. And with hard efforts, they try to stick it to $110, $120 a barrel. But you can imagine that this is going to be increased in the future. And experts say that it will rise up to above $150. And then everything in society will become very expensive, because oil is in the price of everything. But even then, if you want to continue like that, we will be done with fossils and uranium within 75 years. There's not so many people who know that. If you simply divide the world demand for energy by the known resources, also the ones that are not being exploited at the moment yet, then we can only outlast one human life. So simple as that. So, we need to use fossils only for a transition and not to continue the fossil age. And the role of cities in this is very important, because more than 50% of people live there, and it produces 75% of pollution. But the positive thing is it also generates an enormous social coherence and people that want to engage. At the moment, a city is an intestine. A lot of energy, water, materials and food goes in, and a lot of waste energy, waste material, waste food and waste water goes out. This is not a very sustainable system, everyone understands that. But also if you think about hampering supplies, for instance, what if this system is not fed anymore? What is going to happen? Most cities would basically completely die, wouldn't become livable anymore. So what we need to do is change that. And we have occasions in the recent past that demonstrated that the supply of energy also was a really serious problem. We see examples of this here. I won't explain them too much. So it's not something that is imaginary. It already happened, and it will happen again, I can tell you, within a few years. So we need to aim for resilient cities. Cities that are able to cope with their own supplies, that collaborate with their local environment, and that are much more self-sufficient. And the first step to do so is to know the figures. You need to measure, you need to monitor everything that goes in and out of a city. We're accounting money in all kinds of ways. Now we need to start accounting food and materials and water and energy. This is a map showing the heat demand in hollow cores and heat potentials in a city. So the heat potentials are from the sun, the yellow beams, or red from geothermal sources. And we also see roads, for instance, that can be used as solar collectors. And what you see basically is that the demand is twice as high approximately as the potential. So we have to reduce our demand a little bit. And then if we optimally use the potential that is in the city, then we can supply ourselves. A first step then, if we know the figures, we have to reduce the energy demand. Of all the studies I've done in several parts of the Netherlands and outside, we found that we can go up to 50% coverage by renewables, but the rest should come from savings. And these are examples of buildings that were improved from a G level energy quality to A++. So it's possible. These are existing buildings, so new buildings should be no problem whatsoever. That's also what I try to teach students in Delft. Second step, we need to think better about how to reuse, exchange and cascade energy within the city. There's a lot of continuous demand ongoing, also reverse demands between different functions in the city. A dwelling uses energy completely different than an office or a supermarket. So if we want to improve the situation, we should not only think about improving the separate buildings, but thinking of it as a whole system, and thinking about exchanging between the different functions, so that an office not is cooling while a dwelling still is being heated up at the moment. And there's technical solutions to that. So we need to think about buildings perhaps that are synergetic in themselves, so that they have an energy synergy. And we can also think on the neighborhood level, where heat and cold and electricity can be exchanged between buildings, so that excesses or shortages can be mixed. Third step is to interact with the city region, because in a city simply we don't have enough space to produce everything we need in higher densities. So we need to interact with the direct environments of a city. And one of which, for instance, is the treatment of wastewater, which can be purified, of which the nutrients can be used in agriculture again and come back as food to the city, but also as energy perhaps, like with algae in this example for The Hague. And space is very important because if we have to solve everything with renewables, apart from a little bit of geothermal heat, we have to solve everything at the surface. It means that energy becomes space. The use of space is very significant then. And the city simply does not have a lot of space. Or does it? Well, actually it has. There's a lot of surface in the city. We have a lot of roofs, we have a lot of facades, and they could all be used to be made practical. But this is an image of Rotterdam, and the main color you see is grey. Grey from the bituminous roofing systems that they have on top. So there's plenty of surface in the city, but we hardly use it. Which means that for the Christians in the hall, thou shalt produce. And we can do that on every building in the city. Now, I will get back to, and we need to do that quickly because there's a year very soon, only 13 years from now, 12 and a half, that is very significant. Because if we don't change our ways before that time, there's three things happening. The first one is that global heating cannot be controlled above 2 degrees anymore. Which means that all models show all great uncertainties, but we never know where it's going to end. Second step is that we won't have enough fossil fuel to build a sustainable energy system. We need a lot of fossil fuel to build all the wind turbines, PV panels, tidal plants, etc. Because we don't have enough renewables for that yet. And if we don't switch the investments before 2025, there won't be enough for the whole world to switch to renewables. Very important. And the third step is that costs will have become so high for change that it's actually not feasible anymore. Every change costs money. And the longer you wait, the more money it will cost. And by that time, economists say that it will simply be too late. So the consequences of this 2025 term are very simple. It means that with the current speed or lack of speed in building here in the Netherlands, but also in the rest of Europe, not more than 10% of sustainable buildings can be built for the building stock that's already there. So 90% in the future is already there now, and the only effective solution is actually urban innovation, energy renovation, innovation at various scales. Second consequence is that children younger than 70 years will not have an influence on it. Simply because they will only grow 30 by the time that it's 2025. And that's when they become influential in politics, not as consumers. As consumers they are important, but the real changes are made by people over 30. And this means that, for instance, my own daughters here, they come too late. And I have the responsibility to act on their behalf, for instance. So this means that this generation here is a very special generation. We need to do it. It's a bit scary, but I think that's a great honor. And I hope you will join me in that.
Thanks very much. Yeah, great. Am I on? Yeah. This is beautiful because it's designed according to a systems thinking. And that is, of course, what ecologists do all the time. So a system thinking is where you make a lot of connections between different items, and that's what a food web is all about.
Yep.
It also creates a certain dependency on one another. How do you think we can deal with that? I think that is a challenge, but you do see that dependency. If somebody in the chain, in the system, is unlocking, then somebody else has a problem.
Yeah, it's an argument that's coming up every time when you have this discussion, that these systems may be sensible or sensitive to changes and parties withdrawing from the system, but you should actually consider it as a kind of new type of internet, a system that has a lot of sources and sinks, and where there's shortages, there's other places where there's excesses in production, which can be managed by this global system. And interdependency is not bad. I mean, if I can mean something for you, you can mean something for me. And I won't withdraw that much because I feel responsible for you as well. Yep. So I think we need to build that society where you're not like cities at the moment are actually collections of separate buildings, which are all attached to centralized systems, and nobody cares if you leave or not. But we should work much more to an intelligent organism, cities as an intelligent organism.
I think I fully agree, and I really, really enjoyed what you're saying. I think it can also be a call for governments or city planners to look at industrial areas where, you know, especially the old ones are being, you know, left behind. You could plan a whole system there where you actually are the director, the producer of that kind of collaboration that could lead to something a lot more. So welcome in Wageningen. We'll talk further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.